So, Jeremy, I've been researching some names for this podcast that we're going to be doing, and, it's been tough. It's been real tough. Coming up with podcast names is really hard.
Yeah, I'd imagine. I'm interested to hear what you got.
I've got a few ideas, and I've been shopping them around, focus group testing, and some of these are like okay, but I don't know. I've got like a Brave and the Bold cast. I kind of like that one, but like we're not doing Batman Brave and the Bold, so that doesn't feel right to me.
No, I don't think it's fair to piggyback on something that's pretty universally liked. Considering what we're going to be doing.
Yeah, I've got a World's Finest podcast. I think that's a little presumptuous of us.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to get too swollen of heads right off the bat.
Truth, Justice, and the American Podcast tested really well in the Deep South. They didn't know what it was about, but they liked the name.
Gonna have to veto that one, I think.
Alright, well, tell me what you think of this last one, because I think this one's perfect. The Condiment King Fancast.
Oh, man. I don't know about that one.
So hello, and welcome to Live from Blüdhaven, the show that is neither live nor actually from Blüdhaven. My name is Gage.
And my name is Jeremy.
I guess introductions are the first order that we should really get into here. For those that know me, I recently being like a few months ago, like earlier in the year, finished a podcast little mini-series focusing on the Resident Evil films with my buddy Lou Kodjovovich. And it's been some time since that, and I've kind of been looking into like other ideas because I really liked that kind of podcast format. I was looking into like, what movie series would be good for that, if there's just like a general movie podcast idea that I could look into. And then recently, Batman and Harley Quinn came out. And the internet for at least a few days was abuzz with extremely harsh criticism for that movie.
Yeah.
Rightfully so.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever seen a double butt crack before screenshots of that movie came out. I can say I have now, though.
It's a once in a lifetime thing. Only happens every like 20 years or so.
Yeah.
It's like the eclipse.
We get a nice glimpse into Bruce Timm's long hidden R34 folder.
And we'll of course get more of that as we get further into this series. But that gave me the idea because there are at this point a lot of movies under the DC Universe Animated Original Movie banner, let's say, the brand.
Quite a few.
And they go back all the way to 2007. We're talking 10 years of content.
I think Sonic and the Secret Rings had just come out, a true video game classic.
Sure, let's go with that. I didn't like Secret Rings.
It's not very good.
I don't think it's probably aged very well either. Anyway.
Speaking of mediocre.
Speaking of mediocre, the first of these movies, which if it's not clear, this is going to be another podcast in the vein of that Resident Evil cast, where we go through these movies one by one as they came out, watch them, and then just kind of comment on them.
It gave you a real appreciation for dissecting fine cinema. And you just had to find something else.
Yeah, now, I will say that when I thought of this idea, I also thought about who could I take on this journey with me? Who would really appreciate these movies the same way that I do? And my buddy Jeremy here was actually like the very first person I thought of.
Because you saw me drunk tweeting on Twitter, rewatching some of my favorites, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so as far as, the DC movies, I haven't really read a lot of the comics, although I've always liked Batman, starting with the animated series in the 90s, and I watched just about everything that crew put out from, Superman, Justice League, a couple of those movies. And so when I, heard they were starting up, like, their own separate line of animated movies, and a lot of the same names were attached to writers and some of the voice actors, I thought, well, Gosh, what could possibly go wrong?
It's a very good question that I guess we'll find out. Yeah, I have a very similar kind of history with DC Comics where I didn't really read a lot of comics growing up, and while I do like the cartoons, at least I like them now, I never really saw a lot of comics-based cartoons as a kid growing up, and this is just kind of like my history with it, because I didn't understand TV schedules as a kid and generally thought to myself, if the channel isn't playing cartoons all the time, then what's the fucking point? So it was a lot of Nickelodeon and it was a lot of Cartoon Network, but not a whole lot of WB Kids or Fox Kids.
I remember having I never wrote it down, but I, during the summer especially, would have a mental checklist of what channels to watch at what time from like 6 in the morning until 3 or 4 in the afternoon, so I could watch cartoons all day, every day during the week. And then Saturday, you had the magic of like one Saturday morning on ABC and Disney, stuff like that. You'd have to switch between that and Fox Box, so I could catch the latest episode of Sonic X and One Piece.
Don't forget Kirby right back at you.
And is surprisingly true to the original Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, I mean, that was always the weird outlier there. Yeah, the closest I ever got to understanding how TV schedules work is that motherfucking Pokemon was on every day after school on UPN 38.
Oh, yeah.
And, like, I remember one day when I was in, like, 3rd or 4th grade, I don't remember which, but I pretended to be sick because otherwise I would have had to go to an after-school program that day. I pretended to be sick so I could go home and watch Pokemon when it came on.
A worthy cause.
So that's kind of our experiences with this like brand of like, you know, DC and comics in general and stuff like that. I of course gained more of an appreciation for shows like Batman the Animated Series or like any of the other comic book animated series, things like Spider-Man, X-Men, as I got older and could go back and find like DVDs or like digital copies of like shows like this. But I didn't really get into, and I should specify, because this is a very, very important distinction. We are not watching DC animated universe movies. That is a completely different thing. These are DC Universe animated movies.
Yeah, no Mask of Phantasm, Return of Joker, World's
Sub-Zero.
Finest. Yeah,
so maybe at one point we'll do that, you know, once we get enough of a following that I can set up a Patreon and like do bonus stuff.
Oh yeah.
Which, you know, that's definitely a goal, but for now, we need to go all the way back to the halcyon year of 2007, and we gotta start strong with Superman Doomsday. Superman Doomsday is a 2007 American direct-to-video animated superhero film directed by Bruce Timm, Lauren Montgomery, and Brandon Vietti.
I know 2 of those names.
I really like Lauren Montgomery. Did I say Montgomery? Was that the word that I used? Yeah, Lauren Montgomery sounds familiar, but I only really know Bruce Timm.
Yeah, which people will know from Batman animated series. He was
DCAU in general, really.
Oh, okay. So Lauren Montgomery is a director and storyboard artist. She also worked on Crisis on Two Earths, Batman Year One, and she storyboarded on Young Justice and Avatar: The Last Airbender. She's now the co-showrunner of the new Voltron cartoon.
Very nice. So, plot synopsis for Superman Doomsday. In an epic tale of sacrifice, Superman battles an intergalactic serial killer in a superpowered Armageddon, Superman Doomsday. After Superman makes the ultimate sacrifice to save Metropolis by giving his life to defeat the foe, those who loved him the most mourn their fallen hero and friend, but a world without Superman proves to be short-lived when the Man of Steel mysteriously returns. Or does he? So, spoilers right away, Superman dies, but also maybe comes back.
He does. Spoilers for a 20-year-old comic that this is loosely based on.
So, we've got some familiar names as voice actors in this. James Marsters, who I believe is most well known as Piccolo from Dragon Ball Evolution.
Oh, wow. I remember feeling so bad for him when that movie was coming out, because he basically, like, read between the lines in his interviews was like, I really tried, y'all. I tried real hard.
He was the only one who cared. We have some mysterious voice actor as Superman. I don't know. Like, I look at the name in the photo and my eyes just kind of go cross-eyed. It's really weird.
Almost wishing I, if I could wipe his existence from my brain, nothing of value would be lost.
And of course, as far as voice actors that are particularly recognizable, John DiMaggio is in this movie as Toyman, and we're going to see a lot of John DiMaggio. There's going to be a lot of voice actors we see that are going to be recurring through this, because there's...
Got a lot of recognizable names. Tom Kenny, Cree Summer, James Arnold Taylor.
You referenced this a little bit earlier. This movie is, of course, adapted from a very famous comic book event, The Death of Superman.
It was 92, I believe.
Mainly credited for killing death in comics. Prior to Superman, or Death of Superman, rather, generally speaking, characters who died stayed dead.
Right, until this kind of came around and basically undid the rules of death. Like, it wasn't keeping anyone before this from, writing a contrived way for a well-known character to come back. But this basically, told the rest of the comic book world that, hey, you can get away with this garbage.
Yeah, not Death of Superman specifically, of course, but Death of Superman, Reign of the Supermen, and then Return of Superman, which, if anybody's interested in hearing about this whole saga, I would highly recommend Max Landis's The Death and Return of Superman short film, which you can find on YouTube, I believe. It's got some kind of dated humor, let's say.
You'd be remiss to find a better synopsis of exactly what this had on the impact of comics in general.
Now, what do we remember about this movie before we get into it? Do we remember anything specific?
I remember Kevin Smith.
Oh yeah, he's got one line, doesn't he?
It's another thing that's on YouTube that you've probably seen, but Kevin Smith has a famous story about how he was contracted to write a treatment for a modern Superman movie in the 90s. I can't remember how linked it was to the failed movie with Nicolas Cage.
I was gonna ask, yeah.
But basically the story goes is that the director and producers he was working with were nuts and wanted him to add all this crazy stuff. And it ends with the director asking him to put a giant spider into the final act of the movie. And Kevin Smith basically just said, no, I'm going to cash my paycheck. You write the rest of your own shitty script.
Oh shit, there's a giant spider in this one, isn't there?
Yeah.
Toyman's driving a giant spider. Was the director by any chance the same guy who did Wild Wild West?
Yes, I was about to say the director went on to make Wild Wild West.
I knew it. I fucking knew it. Oh
and
my god.
I think Kevin Smith ends the story by saying, so I went to see this movie by this crazy director I worked with, and what do I see in the third act of the movie? A giant fucking spider.
That's
great.
Yeah,
that story has, I guess, now become so persistent in comic book circles that, Kevin Smith just shows up in this movie to yell at Toyman, who has a giant mechanical spider. That's what I remember.
Now, I've been saving this little tidbit that I learned for this particular podcast, but let's real quick talk about maybe some other adaptations of Superman Doomsday, or The Death of Superman, I guess specifically. I don't know how much of Batman v Superman you've actually seen.
Enough. Enough.
As is somewhat famous at this point with the upcoming release of Justice League, everybody knows Superman dies at the end of Batman v Superman. To Doomsday.
Heavy quotes.
Heavy quotes.
Something that looks like Doomsday anyway.
Well, no, he is specifically identified as Doomsday.
Yeah.
In the movie. They do that thing where it's just Lex Luthor is just this creature is your Doomsday, and it's just yeah, we get it. We get it.
Freddy versus Jason, place your bets.
One of the things that bugs me the most, and you know what? No, I'll save that for the end. Talking about what bugs me about how Superman dies in Batman v Superman versus how he dies in most adaptations of the story. But if we continue this podcast into new and upcoming DC Universe animated original films, this isn't actually the last time we're going to be talking about this storyline, because they have announced a two-parter Death of Superman, Reign of the Supermen movies.
I didn't know that. And also, why?
They're set to come out at the end of 2018 and the beginning of 2019 after Gotham by Gaslight and the animated original movie universe Suicide Squad movie.
Y'all have almost 90 years of comics and y'all are already cannibalizing yourselves? Why?
I mean,
I know why. Because...
They already botched the Killing Joke.
Oh,
they need to try something.
That'll be a while, but oh boy, did they ever.
Okay, so we're gonna go watch this movie, and we'll see you guys once we're done with our reactions, and then we'll get into, like, our thoughts about the movie. So, see you in a little bit.
Because Wacko makes the entire line of Riddler games and puzzles, like the Riddler's Riddle Mid. Hours of fun for only $19.95.
All right, and we are back from Superman Doomsday. Let's go into immediate reactions. What'd you think, Jeremy?
Whew, that was a lot of stuff that happened.
It sure was a movie.
Yeah, technically, it was just over an hour, so I think they can officially call it a feature-length film.
Yeah, a lot of these are pretty much just over an hour 15.
Yeah, so I remember a lot of the movie. A lot of.
You sound like, who are you trying to convince here?
I guess myself. I'm trying to convince myself that this was a different experience than when I first saw the movie. And honestly, it really wasn't that different. I was confused. Yeah. I was questioning lots of word choices by the script. Unimpressed with a lot of the performances here. It's a weird movie. It's very weird.
It is. I certainly had a lot of fun watching it, and really, at the end of the day, that's all I want. A movie that's fun to watch.
Yeah, I think...
Some of these aren't going to be fun to watch.
No, I think this one is best watched with someone, definitely, too. If not just so you have someone to turn to and say, did I just hear that right?
No, what the fuck?
So you know you're not going nuts.
So let's get into the plot synopsis. We're gonna do our best to sort of keep this brief. Basically, Superman is well known at the time of this movie, and he's just kind of like doing his thing, trying to cure cancer. Meanwhile, Lex Luthor's over here like coming up with the cure for muscular dystrophy and AIDS in his free time and not doing anything about it because he's so cartoonishly evil.
Yeah, literally the most evil thing you could think a self-professed philanthropist would do is have the cure to a life-debilitating disease and AIDS and say, oh, we're just going to keep that secret and we're going to figure out how to charge the most money for it. Like, this is pre-Martin Shkreli and all that bullcrap. It's, man, is it, like you said, comically over the top for this is the bad guy.
Mm-hmm. So Lois is all like, yo, Superman, I want to take our relationship to the next level. I want you to tell me who the fuck you are. And Superman's like, no, I don't wanna do that.
And this is before or after they fucked? I don't even remember. I want to say
it's after they fucked.
I was about to say.
I remember.
I think it was after because that just adds to the absurdity of she is known Superman biblically and still doesn't know who he is. And
it was definitely after because they had that argument while wearing bathrobes.
Yeah, silky Kryptonian bathrobes in the middle of the tundra. While Superman's robot, who has no name, voiced by Tom Kenny, probably watched the whole time.
So and Superman's just like, nah, I don't want to do that. Meanwhile, Lex Luthor has some scientists drilling into the Earth's core for fuck knows, whatever. And they come across this weird capsule, and the alien's just like, ah, 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 and then suddenly Doomsday bursts out.
Now, hold on. They hit this thing, this hologram with this weird tentacle brain-looking alien comes on who's just speaking gibberish, and one of the drillers goes, how are we supposed to understand it? And Lex Luthor, watching via, remote camera, leans in and says, it's a warning. No explanation for why he would know that. He just knew.
I can tell because I cured muscular dystrophy.
Yeah, seconds later, here comes Doomsday bursting out of this Dead Space Rune-looking capsule thing.
And he just murders everybody.
Oh yeah, like smashing their faces into the rocks. One guy has a Wilhelm scream. It's pretty bad.
And then he just tears off across the world on a murder spree, there's no real rhyme or reason to what the fuck he's killing. He kills like the first thing he does when he gets out of this fucking mine is he sees a deer and he snaps its neck.
Yeah, he doesn't just like jump on it and smash it. He grabs it by the antlers and snaps its neck with like the good old celery crunch. And like the music swells like boom 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 boom, like oh shit.
He's a bad guy.
This guy he's really bad. And that would be one thing if they didn't keep cutting back to Doomsday killing more things. He jumps onto a farm and kills a guy's dog and then kills him and then kills a trucker who's just driving down the road. And
well, we don't know that he killed the trucker. He threw him off the road. He could have landed safely in a nice soft tree.
True. He basically floated off of the screen.
Yep.
I don't even remember what happens before Doomsday gets to Metropolis.
Well, then he gets into Metropolis, and the robot walks in. He's just like, "Yo, Superman, I know you're still recovering post-coitus with Lois, but there's this dude, and he's fucking shit up in Metropolis."
Yeah, we've got a beacon from Metropolis, which he says like 4 more times in the movie. So I don't know. Yeah. Is that just code for the robot was watching the news? Because it's not like Superman gets like notice of these things before like dozens of people are already dead. So,
yeah.
Like, good alert system if you have one there, Kal-El.
So, Superman goes off, and he and Doomsday have their grudge match, and I should point out we are sub 20 minutes into this movie.
Yeah, and I wish I could say something interesting about the fight, but the animation is not bad, but it's just not interesting to watch either.
They sure punch each other.
Yeah, this is kind of a weird, like, evolution of the DC animated Bruce Timm style. So, like, there's lots of harsh angles, and all the muscular guys have barrel chests, and all the ladies are super, super skinny, like really, really skinny. Like Lois looks like she weighs 70 pounds soaking wet.
Oh, man. Yeah, but I mean, like, the fight happens, they beat each other up a bunch, and then Superman dies.
Yeah, although Superman, here's one thing, they don't describe Doomsday at all, and we're just kind of led to believe that he kills things. And, like, Superman knocks him down into a subway, and Doomsday gets up and wants to continue fighting Superman, but then he sees a light from an oncoming subway train, and he runs towards that like a dumb, mean dog. He just attacks the thing that's the most vulnerable on the scene.
And it's the weirdest thing, because it's just like, you think like, oh, he killed like this docile deer, he killed this very aggressive dog, he killed this guy with a shotgun, he killed this dude's truck, he tried to kill this train, and you think, oh, it's this like this escalation of the things that are like attracting his rage, but then he goes after this like 10-year-old girl, and it's just like,
yeah,
was she really the most threatening thing in the area at that moment?
Also, she's just standing there. Like, again, this might be the animation's fault, but they're not like showing that many people running away from Superman and Doomsday. It's almost like the what was it in Man of Steel? Like, oh, all these buildings, there probably weren't people in them.
Until you watch Batman v Superman and you learn that there were totally people in them, and they actually killed a lot of people.
That was the director's plan the whole time, right? But yeah, this little girl is just sobbing in the middle of the street, and Doomsday like has Superman like bleeding, holding it up by his shirt collar, and he drops him to go try and murder this poor little girl.
So then Superman grabs Doomsday, suplexes him from space,
Yeah.
and that's when they die.
And kills them both. The light goes out from Doomsday's eyes, and then Superman's cape is lazily animated, torn on like a piece of rhubarb.
Rhubarb?
Rebar?
rebar?
Is that what I mean? Rhubarb goes in pie, right? Rebar. Which was the cover, like the famous cover of the Death of Superman comic, and it just bothered me how they barely bothered to animate this thing. And then he like falls over into Lois's arms, and she's like, "Oh my God, he's dead! Boo-hoo!"
So they have a funeral for Superman where they have this big monument where it's just like they probably like wasted all sorts of taxpayers' dollars.
Yeah, I think they say later that it's not only a monument, but it's Superman Memorial Park. Like they opened or renamed a park for this dude with this huge like black onyx Superman S.
Of course they did.
And everybody in the city is there to say their goodbyes to Superman.
Including, but not limited to, Lois Lane, Perry White, Jimmy Olsen, Ma Kent, Lex Luthor.
Wait, no, she was watching it from TV, wasn't she?
No, she was there.
Oh, okay, I don't remember that.
Because Lois saw her leave, and then that's when she goes to Smallville.
Okay, but she watched the whole thing on her weirdly drawn, like, flat screen CRTV.
She watched the fight, yeah.
Yeah, because this movie was made in 2007, but the comic was in the 90s, and, like, the look of everything is, like, this weird kind of hybrid, because on the news report, the lady says, not since the death of President Kennedy has a nation mourned for, as much as it has for Superman. And because it looks kind of mattered, I'm like, yeah, I mean, 9/11 was pretty bad.
Man, a hybrid of the 90s and the aughts would be like the best decade ever. We get the Xbox 360 and shitty 90s fashion.
Oh, jeez. Will we still have dial-up internet? Dial-up internet and digital-only video games.
No, we'd get the broadband. We'd get the broadband from the aughts.
But we'd still have Nickelodeon.com, circa 96. So yeah, the Superman and Doomsday have fought and killed each other, and we're about 22 minutes into the movie.
So then, flash forward, and Lois Lane has this like heart-to-heart with Ma Kent about how like, oh, we loved each other, and I pretty much know that he's Clark, because she doesn't know, by the way.
Yeah, she still doesn't know for sure.
But she's just like, oh man, it's just, I feel so alone because like nobody really knows like how I'm possibly feeling.
Yeah, it says you loved him and were loved by him, and I just needed to be with somebody who also knew what it was like. That was like, and it's probably like the most genuine part of the movie. It's a really good performance,
specifically because Superman's voice actor isn't involved in it at all.
God, he phones it in so hard.
But before we get to that, next scene, hey, it's Chaboy, Toyman, and he's got a giant mechanical spider, and he's menacing a bus full of children.
Dude looks like some kind of Invader Zim parody Newgrounds character.
A Newgrounds joke given flesh, I think is the way that we described it.
It sounds like Jake the dog, and he's gonna kill all these baby children in a school bus.
Baby children, not full-grown children.
So Lois and not Jimmy Olsen, because that was like a weird subplot where Jimmy's real sad at the funeral, and some dude from, was it Voyeur News?
It's like the National Voyeur. It's some dumb tabloid.
Yeah, he offers him a job, and he's like, okay. So it's Lois and her new photographer, who rightly calls her nuts for sneaking on top of this roof to
save these kids.
Yeah, all by herself. Anyway, long story short, she gets on the bus, saves most of the kids, alerts Toy Guy, and he's gonna kill Lois and this child. But meanwhile, across the city, somebody punches out of the ground where they were buried in Superman Memorial Park.
It's a worm. It's a mole. It's Superman.
Apparently, he comes and saves the day and drops Lois off on top of the Daily Planet.
No, actually. He saves the day, and then they're flying across the city, and he's just like, yo, Lois, it's really me. And Lois is just like, shit. And she's like, oh, wait, you flew right by my apartment. And he's just like, oh, whoops. And then he flies back, and he's just like, here you go. And she starts like macking on him and like getting her tongue all up in that mouth. And he's just like, whoa, Lois, what? And Lois is just like, we fucked?
And he's like, I need to recover. I just came back from the dead. With like all the cadence of like someone who just popped a Laura tab. So yeah, Superman's acting a little strange and he flies off.
Yeah, and the next time we see him, he's standing in like this weird office. And he's just like, Luthor? Where are you, Luthor? And he starts walking through LexCorp. And then he walks into this room full of like these red lamps, and Luthor's standing there and he doesn't have a shirt on, and he's got these kryptonite gauntlets, and he starts beating the shit out of Superman and getting really into it.
Yeah, this is where, and we can speed up after this, because this is where the movie goes off the rails, because you get a little bit of Luthor's obsession with Superman in the first bit of the movie. Like he's watching Superman like save the world on like all his surveillance cameras. He's using weird words like, Superman, you are justice given flesh. And no human being talks about another using the word flesh unless they are seriously like horned up for that person. Because Lex starts beating Superman up and, cursing at him for dying without, leaving unfinished business. And
literally says, who's your daddy?
And after that, and only after that line, leans down and implies, oh, this Superman is a clone made by Lex.
Yeah.
But I think the writers were trying to do, I think you said before, like a Batman Joker thing, like, oh, without you, my life just doesn't have meaning, except it came across super horny. Like Lex is
so horned up.
Lex needs Superman's body in him to be able to continue existing in this world, and it's just bad. Like, I think they really genuinely thought they were being clever writing Lex like this, but it's just bad. It's weird and dumb and really uncomfortable at times.
So, major story beats. Superman's a clone. Lex has Superman's actual body. That eventually goes missing. And then suddenly, the Superman clone, in a fit of rage after Toyman kills a 4-year-old, kills Toyman.
He escapes, and Superman decides, well, he killed a baby child, so I'll just execute him.
Yeah, just fucking murders Toyman.
And then everybody's like, whoa, Superman doesn't usually do that.
And it should be noted here, and I pointed this out when it happened, in the subtitles, at this point in the movie, they start referring to this character as Dark Superman.
Yeah, I don't think it's ever vocalized, but the subtitles switch to Dark Superman. Which, speaking of the subtitles, we also noticed that there are several instances where the subtitles have someone cursing, like very mild, like nothing you couldn't say on TV. Like, so you say hell, damn, ass. For some reason, the voices have been recorded over to say something more mild.
Yeah, for whatever reason, the digital copy through Vudu, which is the service that I use for like all my digital copies recently, is the edited version.
And that really doesn't make sense to me, because I remember specifically when this movie came out a decade ago that they emphasized during the marketing that this was the first animated DC movie to be PG-13. And like looking back on it, like there's nothing that they couldn't show on like Toonami like during the afternoon. It just seems kind of ridiculous that, like, the most, like, violence, or, I don't mean, we do see some violence. We see Superman kill Toyman by dropping him from like 400 feet in the air. But like
Yeah.
we see 2 like bloody scratches on someone. And aside from the subtitles, this movie has like no cursing in it whatsoever.
Pretty much, yeah. So Dark Superman at this point is acting also cartoonishly evil. Every bad guy in this movie is like cartoonishly bad. I shit you not, there is a point where he is delivering this very threatening monologue to a little old lady while holding and stroking a cat. He is $10 million away from being Dr. Evil.
Yeah, this lady's cat is stuck up in a tree, and she's, "Oh, precious, come down." And Superman picks the cat up, and instead of handing it to her, starts lecturing her on, domestic Persians are best kept indoors. And
it's just like,
this,
oh my
like,
god.
80-year-old woman, he's basically threatening to, if you let your cat run outside again, I'm gonna kill you where you stand, old woman. So this clone Superman thinks he's doing what's best for the city. He says, I'm the morality this city needs. And meanwhile, Lex Luthor's like, "No, you're my boy toy clone. You're gonna do what I say,
or else I'm gonna take you out of this world the way I brought you in."
Yeah, dude, quotes the Cosby Show. And so Superman figures, okay, he's got to have some kind of like remote bomb or something to control me. This is Dark Superman. So he walks into a beauty salon in the middle of the day.
It was called Le Fantastique.
And uses his X-ray vision to see he's got a tiny lead container in the middle of his brain. And because it's lead, he can't see through it. He's like, but it's gotta be kryptonite. So he uses his heat vision and a pair of hair-cutting scissors to dig the lead ball out of his brain before leaving the citizens in the beauty salon.
All the while, back in the Fortress of Solitude, Superman is being nursed. The actual Superman is being nursed back to health by SpongeBob the robot.
Yeah, we found out Superman's robot was the one that broke into LexCorp and stole the real body. And Superman's very, very drained. We learned Kryptonians have some kind of Saiyan race bullshit where they don't actually die. They just go into like really deep comas and then they get stronger after they get all better.
And now that Superman is being healed back at the Fortress of Solitude, he can grow out his sick mullet.
God.
So Dark Superman is fucking wreaking havoc in Metropolis, and real Superman is trying to get better back at the Fortress of Solitude. All the while, Lois and Jimmy are trying to figure out what the fuck's going on, and they go to LexCorp and they find out, oh shit, Superman's a clone, and Lex Luthor's just like, yes, he's a clone. I'm so horned up for Superman, you guys. I'm gonna make a race of Superman, and then Dark Superman shows up and he's just like, I'm gonna fucking kill you, Lex. And Lex is like, no, I'm gonna retreat into my red sunroom and grab my gauntlets and we're gonna fight. And Superman's just like, nah. And then he picks up the whole room and just like chucks it at the ground.
The man who apparently single-handedly cured AIDS thought that Superman would fall for the same trick of just walking into this red room again.
Lex Luthor's a fucking dumbass.
Yes. Especially in this movie with his incredibly sharp cheekbone handles.
Ooh, I want to pick him up by him. Just body slam him.
So yeah, we saw Superman kill Toyman the same way. So Lex Luthor's got to be dead, right? He just chunked him like 1,000 feet in a metal room to the ground.
That's what everybody seems to be thinking. So Superman back in the Fortress of Solitude gets an alert, just like, yo, there's a bad Superman fucking up Metropolis, and he's just like, shit, I gotta get all suited up. And this is how, because like we mentioned, the death of Superman, Reign of the Supermen, Return of Superman is all from like the 90s, and the 90s is what a lot of people refer to as the Dark Age of comics. There are some people who say that the Dark Age of comics is still ongoing. I don't necessarily subscribe to that notion, I'll just say that outright. I really like a lot of the comics that have been coming out lately, but that's neither here nor there. Because it's the Dark Age of comics, and everybody has to look way more badass than they were originally conceived way back in like the fucking 30s, Superman is given several justifications for why he A, has a black suit, and B, has a gun.
In addition to the aforementioned mullet.
In addition to the mullet. So we've got a mulleted Superman in a black and silver suit, which is described as a solar suit that helps him absorb the sun's rays a little bit better, which,
Why wouldn't
sense.
he have that all the time? Doesn't he want to be like at his best to always serve the city?
I mean, usually he's not freshly dead.
True. Yeah, he did.
Usually.
The robot did mention he's currently at only 67% his full strength. But he's gotta go stop Dark Superman.
Yeah, and because he's at 67% strength, he is also given a kryptonite cannon to level the playing field. Hence, justification for the gun.
Yeah, the gun with a big old cartridge of kryptonite.
So Superman fucks off to Metropolis, and he and Dark Superman have like a stare down, and he's just like, "Oh, I'm the Superman this city needs," and Superman's just like, "I'm the Superman it deserves." I mean, wait, what? What does that even mean? Who knows? Let's fight, and they fight. And they're like beating the shit out of each other.
Yeah, they have this conversation where, Dark Superman basically says like, I'm what you could have been, or what you should be. And then Superman says something about, you're a reflection of me in a cracked mirror, which is a cool line, but he delivers it so poorly, like it implies that
this
we were
weird,
already
disembodied Superman voice that we can't possibly attribute to anybody.
No. We'll get to that. But the way he delivers it implies like they were talking about mirrors already, and it's like one of the few cool lines in this movie that's ruined by like bad delivery. Like I bet some of these folks were like, "Yeah, I got one take for the day, and that's it," and then just fucked off out of there.
Yeah, like the exact inflection is my reflection in a cracked mirror, when it should have been read, because the way that he emphasized the word cracked, like you said, made it sound like, mirrors had come up earlier in the
Nobody's
conversation.
talking about mirrors, Superman.
Nobody's fucking talking about him. It should have been more like my reflection in a cracked mirror.
Yeah, emphasis on mirror, because this is the first time someone's bringing it up, you dumbass.
Yeah. So they have a big dumb fight, and it eventually gets to the Memorial Park, and they bust up fucking
Taxpayer manual, yeah.
An oil tanker, the Memorial. Lois shows up, blasts Dark Superman with the kryptonite gun. That gets all fucked up, but then Superman very sneakily sticks the kryptonite cartridge to Dark Superman's chest, stuck to the oil, and then blows him up with it. And that's the end. Superman wins.
The Dark Superman dies in real Superman's arms, and he says something real tragic, like, "Oh, take care of the city. Oh, I love it so much." It's like, you're a dumb clone. No one will mourn you. You have no soul.
Gives a fuck. I want to say, for a movie that made a huge deal about Dark Superman killing somebody, Superman kills both of the major fights that he has with bad guys in this film.
I mean, I guess their justification is they're not people, because Doomsday was like a pointy alien thing that we got zero backstory on, and Dark Superman was a soulless LexCorp clone.
He wasn't soulless though. That was the thing.
Yeah,
he had sentience and self-awareness.
He had a conscience. Like, he genuinely thought he was doing the right thing, which is also like the basis for like 24 other Superman becomes morally compromised, like Injustice and Red Sun and all these other
the Justice Lords episode of Justice League.
Yeah, it's not exactly an original take, but
it's not.
So yeah, that was basically the whole movie. Oh, and then the stinger is that Lex Luthor is alive and he's still totally popping a boner for Superman.
Oh, he's so hard. So let's get into what we liked. The actual style and animation of the movie was pretty good.
It's I wouldn't put it as like, theatrical quality, but it's a step above like your average TV animation.
Yeah, it's about the same as like the DCAU.
Yeah, it's the few subtle like flourishes that are different. It's just not that interesting to look at. Like, there's a lot of sharp angles, and all these characters have really harsh cheekbones, and I wouldn't say it's competent, but it's not pretty.
Yeah.
So
most
it's
of
good.
the voice acting was okay.
Yeah, Lois is probably, I think she has more lines than anybody in this movie. And was it Anne Hesh? She does a pretty good job portraying this Lois. It's not my favorite design for Lois. I always liked the 90s power suit shoulder pads super animated Superman Lois.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not bad. It's a good performance at least.
I would say that despite the script giving him some really weird lines, fuck, I completely forget Luthor's voice actor's name now.
Oh, is it Jason Masters, the guy from
James
Buffy?
Masters?
Yeah, I think it's James.
Yeah, Piccolo.
Yeah, the only
Piccolo
guy
from
that
Dragon Ball
tried.
Evolution.
The only guy that tried in that movie.
He delivers his lines very genuinely, I would say.
Yeah, I think he gave a good performance with a bad script.
Yeah.
Which I think is the opposite of Superman, which, look, I'm just going to say it once. Let's get it out of the way. Fuck Adam Baldwin. He's a trash fire. He sucks in this movie. He's the worst. Phoned in performance. They give him some of the best lines in the movie, and he fucks it up so bad.
It reaches its peak when Superman is talking to Dark Superman because it's just flat delivery against flatter delivery.
It's monotone in stereo, and they're fighting and grunting, and it's like, ha, ooh, and it's so bad. He sucks. I hate it. It's bad to listen to.
So I guess we're kind of segueing into what we didn't like about the movie at this point.
Oh yeah,
we're
we're
out of
supposed to
things
be
to like about
positive.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
I can't say it's not 100% the movie's fault, but I don't like the story. On the whole, if you didn't have a familiarity with the original comic book arc, this movie just makes no sense. Like, what the hell? How did Doomsday's, pod get into this mine in the earth?
What the fuck is Doomsday?
Yeah, what is Doomsday? What's that alien dude? It requires you to know, intimately the dynamic between Superman, Lois Lane, and Lex Luthor. That they are all familiar with each other. Because that's one of the things is that when Luthor clones Superman, he mentions that Superman only knows what he programmed him to. So he knows Lois Lane, but didn't know that they were in an intimate relationship. And it's like, if you didn't know that Luthor was that familiar with all of them, it just makes no sense.
Yeah, this is, to be sure, a very rushed version of the Death of Superman storyline, and also the Reign of Superman, where, because the Reign of the Superman has about 4 different versions of Superman, or Superman sort of backup dancers, let's say.
Yeah, there's no Steel, no Superboy, no those 2 other guys.
He's not Superboy, he's the Metropolis Kid. That's a Death and Return of Superman reference for you internet savvy folk out there.
None of those guys are in this.
No Eradicator. The closest thing we get is Cyborg Superman is kind of like the clone Superman.
Yeah, I guess. But he was just flesh and blood. But yeah, the story itself, it's just not very well done. I don't know, in modern comic circles, if the original story is held in a high capacity.
I don't think it is. Because here's the thing, is that from what I understand within the context of the original story, and also within the context of this movie, Doomsday comes and goes, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Doomsday was specifically created to kill Superman. It's kind of like every single adaptation of Sherlock Holmes builds up Moriarty, right?
Yeah.
Because he's the Napoleon of crime, but in the context of the original story that Moriarty appeared in, he was created specifically for that story. There is no other mention of him prior to that particular Sherlock Holmes story. It's kind of a similar thing with Doomsday, where his origin and his purpose is more or less entirely contained within Death of Superman.
Yeah, and it's blatantly obvious too, because that's what he does in this movie.
He's just the first act. He's the first act.
He shows up, he kills Superman, he's gone. He's dead. That's it.
Pretty much the titular character number 2 of Superman Doomsday, plays out his entire role in the story within the first third of the movie.
I guess even though, like, the movie is based on an old comic, they didn't want to call it The Death and Return of Superman because that kind of spoils the last half of the movie. But for people just going in, and that's how they advertised it, was this is Superman dies. He fights Doomsday and dies. And then people come in and see that that's, like, only 1/3 of the movie. It just seems so... Like you said, it's a rushed adaptation of a multiple comic story. And like any complaints aside from that, like we already complained about some of the really flat performances and stuff like that. But yeah, aside from the story just isn't very interesting to watch. Everything else is just kind of falls in line with that.
Yeah, like I would be very interested. Like I'm actually genuinely interested in seeing like the 2-parter that they have planned for like end of 2018, early 2019, to see if maybe they can like flesh it out a little bit more.
Hit it in a do-over.
Yeah, because the entire like issue here is that because Doomsday just kind of comes and goes, it doesn't feel like the fight has any stakes. Like we kind of discussed this when the movie was going on, but like I didn't really feel any sort of tension, and in fact, we started talking about other shit during that fight.
Yeah.
I forget what we were talking about, but like we went way off the rails because it's just 2 dudes punching each other.
Yeah, combined with the the non-dynamic animation, like we know what's going to happen in this fight. Somebody's going to die. And there's just we're not emotionally invested because we know Superman's the good guy, we know Doomsday's the bad guy, and that's about it.
Yeah, like there's ways to make fights interesting in these movies, and as we watch through these, we're going to see plenty of examples of that. You can have a fight that has like fantastic choreography and animation, like Wonder Woman and Big Barda versus the Furies of Apocalypse in Superman Batman Apocalypse. Or you make it like emotionally important. You make it a fight that matters, like Batman versus the Red Hood and Under the Red Hood.
Yeah. Like, even if during the fight with Doomsday, like, because they try to do it when Doomsday tries to kill the little girl, but if you maybe made the stakes like, oh, Superman is trying to carefully, even when Doomsday's knocking him into buildings, like, avoiding populated areas. And I mean, that's probably a budget thing. Like, they didn't want to have to animate dozens of people, like, getting out of the way of this fight. But yeah, otherwise there's just no stakes. Like, if you're not gonna make it super interesting to watch with like you said, dynamic choreography, you gotta at least like make us care by, you know, showing some emotion. Like, you know, otherwise why don't they just level the city and fight?
Yeah, I mean, what was it that Bruce Timm said about Batman Beyond Return of the Joker, when like that fucking laser's sweeping through the city? All the buildings are empty and the cars are driven by robots.
Yeah. That's a good line. That's a good callback. Which, you know, that's funny because, oh, he's making a joke, wink, wink. But when you can see that there's nothing going on in the background, it's just, why do I care? This is just 2 dumb idiots knocking over Lego bricks as far as I'm concerned.
Pretty much, yeah. Like, that's all that it feels like. Doomsday barely gets a build-up. We don't know anything about him. He just kind of shows up, beats the shit out of Superman, and dies. That's his whole character arc.
And I feel like we're stuck on this, but because that's only because the entire point of this movie, which is Superman fighting Doomsday, is so nothing. It really is nothing. It fails its own source material, and that the whole reason the movie was made is not interesting.
I feel like there's other things that I really kind of need to sort of compare this to. That sort of thing kind of showed up in Justice League, where, like, I think I mentioned earlier, like the Justice Lords episodes of Justice League. Doomsday shows up in that. They kind of do the Doomsday thing in that one, but it ends with Doomsday getting lobotomized by Justice Lord Superman. And then he comes back later in, like, Justice League Unlimited, and it's weird. But, like, it's sort of a thing where we need sort of a throwaway character to show that this is a different version of Superman and that he isn't afraid of, like, pushing the boundaries. So, like, who can we bring in? Let's bring in Doomsday, because who fucking cares?
Yeah. He's not he doesn't have any staying power if he's not going to succeed in murdering Superman.
I would say the Batman v Superman version of this fight had more stakes, and I was invested in it way more. Cause
I've barely seen that movie, and I think I have to agree with you.
Because, like, the way that it's set up is that it's not like, oh, Doomsday is just this fucking random alien pod that showed up and he has no purpose other than, like, just kind of beating the shit out of Superman. I mean, that is still his purpose, but he was created in Batman v Superman. Spoilers for Beeves, by the way. He was created in Batman v Superman by Lex Luthor to kill Superman in the event that Batman could not do it. And, like, in that movie, they at the very least try to... They make a concerted effort to make sure that the fight takes place away from people, which is more than Superman ever did in Man of Steel.
No, that was the plan the whole time, remember?
I'm glad that they address it in the second movie. I don't think that was the plan at all.
No, they pulled that out of their ass, totally.
But while we're kind of on the subject of Superman Doomsday v. Beeves, I kind of want to talk about this a little bit, because this is a point of contention I have with Batman v Superman, in that every other version of, like, the Superman Doomsday storyline that I've seen, like the death of Superman, it's really just that Doomsday beats the shit out of him, which is like, okay, he's probably got, like, internal injuries that he's going to need to heal over a period of time. He gets fucking impaled in Batman v Superman. Doomsday's got this big ass spike hand, and he shoves it all the way through Superman.
He did what Lex Luthor in this movie never could himself.
Stick Superman with a large phallic object.
Sorry, that you can cut that out. That was pretty bad.
No, I'm leaving that in. That's absolutely staying in. Okay, so our next segment is called Sell the Movie. And Jeremy and I are going to... What we're going to do in this segment is we're going to pick a scene or a sequence out of this movie, the next movie, any movie that we watch, and be like, if you wanted to get somebody to watch this movie, show them this scene. This can be something that we legitimately think is great, or it can be something just like, hey, check out this shit. Which I think for this movie, we both sort of, like, unanimously decided that there's at least one of each.
Definitely, if you want to see, and it's good because it occurs, like, about 28-30 minutes into the movie, so you don't have to wait too long to get to it. But the scene where clone Superman, who we don't know is a clone yet, gets his ass beat by a shirtless Lex Luthor in an incredibly homoerotic scene, buddy, you gotta see that shit, because that is where the movie definitely tips over the edge into Crazy Town.
On the flip side, if you're looking for something that's kind of like a little bit more like genuine, a little bit more serious, the scene in which Lois Lane goes to Superman's mother, Martha Kent.
Martha!
Looking for somebody... You're ruining this for me. Looking for somebody to confide in who she feels can feel the same way about Superman for the most part. That scene is so genuine and so, like, legitimately well acted that it stands out in an otherwise incredibly mediocre movie.
The scene deserves to be in a better movie. But it really is, and that's something I think a lot of Superman media has trouble doing. There have been a couple of really good comics that show, like, Superman deep down has a human heart and a human emotions and affects people like a person does. And it's nice to see, even in, you know, this movie that isn't very good, that they managed to nail that down of, oh, you know, Superman has made a great emotional impact on the world, even on an individual level. Which I guess they also try and show that with the little kid they interview on the news.
Oh my god!
After Superman dies.
I hate that kid.
I don't remember what he says at the funeral.
He was like, he was like, this year for Halloween, I dressed up as Superman. Now I'm going to do it every year for the rest of my life. And I'm just like, oh my god, fuck this kid.
Like this random blank-eyed child that they're interviewing on the news. And then the kid shows back up. Like, after the real Superman has killed the clone, Lois is like, it may take a while for the people to trust you again, because, they saw Superman murder everybody. And then this same kid that was on the news, somehow in the middle of all this wreckage, is like, I like the red and blue costume you wore better, Superman. It's like, maybe it won't take that long. Everybody loves you again. This stupid child.
Oh my god, I hate that kid. I know absolutely nothing about that kid. I hate him.
No, he's bad. He's a bad child.
Another good scene, if you want to convince somebody to watch this movie, is, especially if you've seen the previous scene of Lex Luthor beating the shit out of the Superman, is Lex Luthor trying to lure the Superman clone back into the Red Sun radiation room.
Oh, yeah.
And then the Superman clone just closes the door, lifts the whole room up, and then just spikes it into the ground. And it's fucking... The way that it plays out is fucking hilarious. And thankfully, we get maybe one line from Superman's mysterious disembodied voice actor, who I can't think of who to possibly contribute that to.
Yeah, I didn't name him earlier in the episode.
No, not at all. Like,
no.
you said something, but like my mind went blank and all I heard was static.
Yeah, sorry, it's my bad connection here. I'm sure it has nothing to do with how loathsome of a person it is.
Yeah. Okay. So for our final segment on our show today, another regular segment for this particular series, and this is something that again was inspired by the recent release of Batman and Harley Quinn.
We didn't know we needed this particular segment until very recently in the the release of these animated movies.
And it's going to be a very fun segment because I feel like knowing this and going into the movie with this mindset recontextualizes a lot of things. But the segment is called How Horny Is It?
I like those clap emojis.
How, on a scale of 1 to 10, Jeremy, how horny was this movie?
Oof. It's hard to say because it's not... I don't think it was the full intention of the producers of this film. I'm going to have to put this one at a pretty solid 8. Because we do see, although we don't see the act, we see Superman and Lois Lane like post-coitus, like they're in their sexy robes. There's no question as to what happened. And then the whole thing with Lex Luthor, like being this attached to Superman, just drives it through the roof. Like, it is crazy. He's crazy boned up for this Superman. Absolutely.
We haven't quite hit the level of double butt crack, but we have hit the level of Lex Luthor's weird BDSM obsession with Superman.
Who's your daddy? Whispered into Superman's ear.
Ugh. I feel greasy just thinking about it. Yeah, I think 8's probably a good place to put it at.
The intentional stuff is like actually handled pretty like tastefully. There is a scene where...
Are you trying to tell me that the shit with Lex Luthor wasn't intentional?
I think they were trying to go for some different dynamic, and they were just such bad writers. It just came off as super horny. The scene where Lois makes out with Lex to like get him to drop his guard is super gross. Like they animated it like they're two fish like trying to eat each other's faces. And it's gross. So I don't know if that counts as horny, but it's nasty.
It was a very horny scene.
Not in any way the good kind.
Oh man. So I think that about wraps it up for Superman Doomsday. We can put a nice pretty bow on top of this one and call it done.
It's pretty bad.
It's not great, but hopefully
it's funny. It is funny to make fun of. I will say that it's a good bad movie.
Yeah. Ideally, next week's will be better. Next week's being Justice League: The New Frontier, which was probably, I can't remember if Justice League: The New Frontier or Batman Gotham Knight was my first one of these. I think it was Gotham Knight, but New Frontier was definitely soon after that, and I remember really liking that one.
I don't think I've ever seen that one. I remember turning it off like 10 minutes in because the animation was really weird, but I mean, that was almost 10 years ago, so...
It's one of those ones where they try to match the style of the original comic and the animation, and I haven't really seen a lot of the original comic, so I can't say how well they do it versus, say, like how well they do it for Superman, Batman, Public Enemies.
Well, I get to go in this one pretty fresh then.
Yeah.
Woohoo!
So that's pretty cool. So we're going to go ahead and sign off. I'm Gage. You can find me on Twitter at sane_intolerant or on Tumblr at saneintolerant.tumblr.com.
And I am Jeremy. You can find me on Twitter at GameBuddy, GameBuddy, and you don't want my Tumblr, trust me.
And until next time, comics are weird.
Yes, they are.
Good night, everybody.